Hi there, welcome to the Bitcoin Wyckoff technical analysis session. And last week we already talked about Bitcoin is heading towards adjustment, and I shared that if the price do not stay within the light blue upward channel, it's very likely that the adjustment is going to continue deeper. And indeed, this week it proves what happened. Basically, it's outside of the channel now, so we only hope that it's going to stay above the purple key level. That's the first key support level as of this moment, while it's outside of this light blue upward channel. However, we also talked about, besides the upward channel, this small one, the price is still within this pink box, this pink channel, the larger upward channel that started as early as 2024. It hasn't stopped from 2024 all the way till now. The price has been trading within this upward channel, this pink channel over here. However, the current drop or the current price fall may have a chance to break this larger channel as well. So right now, when the price tests the 104K key level, then what happens is there can be two scenarios. One, it shows a rebound to LPSY, so it rebound from here and then shows an LPSY. That means a mini peak after the upthrust or upthrust of the distribution. So I'll come back to the yellow and blue scenarios later. So eventually it will come down to test both the purple key support and the pink support again. So this double support, dual support, however you want to name it, that's going to be a very significant challenge for the price. So if the bulls want to keep the run continue, they have to heavily defend this point if it really happens that way around November time. So interestingly, just remember November for a second, because I'm going to come back to this now, and that's also why I mentioned in the title, is it repeating 2021? We'll go to 2021 in a minute. So remember this LPSY, the key dual support over here. If the bulls successfully defended this, there's still a chance that the price can still trade within this upward channel box, this pink box over here. However, that's probably not likely the case unless there's very positive news, such as a bunch of countries suddenly come out and announce they're going to adopt Bitcoin, and I don't see it as a likely scenario as of this moment. And then, what if it really comes down? So one thing is, if it really shows us an LPSY peak over here, if you're into candlestick pattern analysis, you would have noticed a pattern right there. That's the head and shoulder pattern, right? So the first shoulder happened between May to June, and then we just passed through the head, and now it's coming down for the right shoulder. Whether it would happen this way, I'm not sure, but it looks like it's heading that direction. So I shared before that I have some hypothesis about upthrust of the distribution, and besides the AR, the automatic reaction of the buying climax, I would consider that an AR2, the red candle down over here, and then for now the upthrust of the distribution, that's AR3. So just to let people understand, it's similar thing. They're all automatic reaction after a peak. And to differentiate at the same time, AR2 refers or relevant to upthrust, AR3 for upthrust of the distribution. So the blue scenario seems to still played out pretty well, consistent or aligning to the Wyckoff standard definitions. The yellow scenario obviously is still at play as well. So the main difference is whether the price would rebound to a level to challenge maybe 150k or at least higher than 123. So if that happens, that means the blue scenario probably won't stand anymore, but instead it's actually the yellow scenario that has played out this time. However, as of this moment, they are both still in the game. Now, we've talked about this LPSY and testing of the key level. If it really comes down to this point, that's another major level at 91k, the blue key level. That's where the AR2 is. If it doesn't hold and continue to die down because it's the end of the distribution and people start to panic and sell, then eventually we'll see this sign of weakness over here. So there will be multiple LPSYs and then eventually come back down. How deep? We're not sure yet, because there may be entities going in to buy the dip. A lot of people would buy the dip if it comes down to, I don't know, 70k to mid 50k, because they think it's very cheap already. So it's really difficult to predict because of the crazy distribution cycle, the peaks of the peaks this time. If it really comes down, there is a chance that it starts to accumulate at a level much higher than what we have seen back in 2023. So that's a possibility, and that level would be somewhere around the peak of the 2021 cycle. So that's one scenario if it really comes down for consolidation or like getting into the accumulation cycle. However, there is still a mild chance or a tiny chance that it comes back to the long-term playground zone. This white box over here, that's the most pessimistic scenario. However, that's the long-term trend that I tracked from 2016 all the way through 2023, and it's only from then onwards, fourth quarter 2023, that when the price broke out, it completely deviates from this long-term trend. So would the price come back to the long-term trend? It only time can tell, but that's the worst case scenario I can tell you. So let's say if this is 10% coming down to this level, consolidate or accumulate around somewhere around mid 50 to mid 70k. That's the more likely scenario, maybe 60%, 70%. The remaining 30 to 20 to 30% is that it continues to go upwards for a little while. So that's the big picture scenario. Let's go to the daily chart and then I'll come back to the 2021 cycle. So daily, a couple of things has already happened and confirmed. So for the time being, I'll move the upwards of the distribution to this point instead of using the second test. And the sign of weakness already appeared last week when we had the session. So immediately after the LPSY happened. So if I change it to a line chart, it clearly shows the sign of weakness and then LPSY immediately follows. So I can keep adding these LPSYs over here, but that would make the chart very busy. So a lot of times I tend not to add too many, just that you know there are LPSY, then that's sufficient. So if I make it like this, it's easier to see, right? So the upwards of the distribution was here, upwards here, buying climax was there was a second test, another second test. So 3 second tests before the actual upwards happened. And then after the upwards there were some subsequent tests as well. So let's just put one over here so you know it happened. So that was the AR2 I mentioned. So this is, we can call that AR3 or just put a sign of weakness for simplicity reason. So now that we have multiple LPSY happening, the price is coming down to test this purple level. So before that happened, last week after our session, when the price came to form the LPSY, it actually tested this resistance level at around 116 or close to 117K. That is a level formed by this platform. So we see a very flat bottom over here during the upthrust and its subsequent second test. Even when the price fell down from the upthrust of the distribution, that was the support line. However, this time when the price eventually fall below it on 18th of October, August, my tongue started to get tired again. It's weekend, sorry about that. So it clearly has become resistance. So for 2 consecutive days, the price has been rejected from that level, and then now it eventually came down to test the next intermediate support level, and this one, that's also why I'm not putting this as key levels, because they may provide a little bit of support, just like what happened on Wednesday and Thursday, but eventually the price will continue to come down. This intermediate level only has the buying climax back in May 22nd. Remember, this buying climax is a daily time frame buying climax, and the subsequent second test all peaked and got rejected around this level. So that's why there is a support or resistance line over here. Now it has fallen below the line, it has become resistant. 2 days ago it was still a support line. So continuing with this trend, and it will eventually test a real key level. So this key level has multiple stronger reference points. One over here, the second, the period of almost over a week of trading during the PSY level, and then over here there were some peaks over here, buying climaxes as well as second test. So that's why this is a stronger level compared to the 2 dotted lines above over there. So when it comes to this, if this one also doesn't hold, that's a very big warning sign I already explained. When the price comes eventually, if it trades sideways, so a possibility is, if I extend this line, you see when this resistance continue, and if Bitcoin continues to trade sideways between the purple key level, supposedly it will find stronger support, and this dotted line keep rejecting the bulls. When we get to February latest, a breakout has to happen. So the longest time it has, or the longest time window it has, is till the end of January next year, if it really trade that long sideways. Not that I see it going to happen that way, just that if the bulls and the bears are going to continue at this level, there are a few months they can play with, and when that happens, when it gets closer to the tip, it either has to show us that it's going to retest this upward trend box, this pink box, or it has to fall outside of this box and do something else outside of the box, basically. So from a time frame perspective, there are still a few months for people to play around at this level if nobody panics. That's the prerequisite. If somebody starts to panic and a bunch of people follows, this purple line obviously won't hold. Likewise for this dashed line at a lower level, that's only an intermediate support. I've already mentioned this around 91K blue key level, that's the next key support over there. So as of now, in the daily, there's no Bollinger Band curve squeeze, so the fall or the swing may continue, but there's no particular squeeze force pushing the price crazily to one side or the other. So back to the weekly, now I'm going to touch on the 2021 cycle. So remember what I said earlier, the head and shoulder, right? Over here. Shoulder, head, and maybe now it's developing another shoulder. Look at what happened here in 2021. So let me switch on the auto, bring it over. Now we can see clearly, after buying climax and the second test subsequently, there was another second test before the climb towards the upthrust back in 2021 fourth quarter. So that's the shoulder, and then upthrust was the head, and eventually the last point of supply that forms the right shoulder. And that was what happened back in 2021. Fast forward to where we are now. We had this peak, whether I call that a second test or not, doesn't matter, just another test. Let's say we make it consistent with 2021. Shoulder, head, and now is it repeating 2021? There's a very likely chance, and let's have this video as a record when it happens, because this shoulder is going to take another month before it fully develops. It may be over a month as well. So we may forget by then because it's 4 weeks from now. So I'm not sure whether that will happen exactly the same, but if it does, both the candlestick pattern analysis theory as well as history repeating itself would come true by then. So let's give it 4 to 6 weeks. By the end of September, or somewhere between end of September to end of October, we'll know whether that's really a shoulder, while it also fulfills the Wyckoff LPSY stage. Thanks for joining me. See you